Got on my leather jacket thriller. The show ain't nothing iller. Man, I'm a lady killer. If I want her, I'ma steal her. I promise I can make her fly away like caterpillars. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Vaughn Agency, Ask the Expert. Today, we're going to get familiar with Selina Grey, dear friend and a candidate for the New York City Council in the 49th District. Welcome, Selina.
Thank you for having me, Leticia and George. It's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
We're happy to have you. And say hello, everybody, to my partner, George.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so let's get started. I am loving introducing Selina. I've known her for a long time, and we've worked together on many projects. And we're both going to be running for office together in 2021. And we're both going to be having primaries, but Selina's a Democrat, so she'll be involved in a Democrat primary. And I'm a Republican, and I'll be involved in a Republican primary. But we'll both be running together. And let me tell you a little bit about Selina right now. Selina is the political community organizer for the New York State Nurses Association. She is a small businesswoman. And Selina, I want you to talk a little bit about what you do now with the Nursing Association and about your background in finance, which I think is very important for our viewers to know.
Well, currently, I am the political community organizer with the New York State Nurses Association. I actually organize the members in 3 facilities out here. That's in Rumsey, Staten Island University Hospital, and the Visiting Nursing Association, which has about 30 members. In total, about, I would say, close to 3,000 members that I organize out here for bargaining, legislation, lobbying. So that's what I do out here, and making sure that I'm pushing the union's message through those facilities. In finance, I started out as a while ago as a vice president at Bear Stearns. I started out in the foreign exchange department, and I promoted myself within the company to vice president in derivatives, which, you know what happened to the derivatives. It brought down the whole market, mortgage derivatives. It was a bad look. I then moved from there to Credit Suisse, which I went back into the derivatives department because that's where my expertise was at that time. And I got laid off, and I really was feeling a little salty about working in corporate because it wasn't fulfilling for me anymore. I was looking for an out. So when I got laid off, I still needed to make money. I'm a homeowner. I have a family, so I still needed to make money. So I obtained my licenses, my Series 6, 63, my annuities, variable and fixed, and life insurance license. And I started building a book of business on my own and serving clients that I currently serve today out here in Staten Island. I have law enforcement, friends, family members who are my clients, and I just make sure that I manage a lot of their business here. Then I started managing campaigns simultaneously as well. Leticia, that's where we met. I got tricked into managing our council members.
I wouldn't say it was a trick.
It was a trick. I had no idea. I thought I was going to do something really small, and I wound up doing something really big, but it was something that I love to do. So Debbie Rose, Councilmember Debbie Rose, 2013 campaign, I ran that campaign, and it was successful. We had a great team behind us. She ran again in 2017, and I managed that campaign by myself. Somebody threw me under the bus again. At that year, the council member was primary, so it was a tough race, but we were victorious. Then I ran Patricia Kane's campaign, who's currently our executive director for the New York State Nurses Association. At the time I ran Patricia Kane's campaign, she was the treasurer. And then when we lost, she became the executive director of the union. Then after that, I ran Edwina Martin for civil court judge. I ran that campaign, and that was like, we had to put that campaign together in like 3 months.
Right.
It was a short campaign. It probably was the toughest campaign because just mobilizing the votes and mobilizing people and just, you know, kind of getting the money for that campaign because it was such a short campaign. It was probably the toughest campaign I ever had because we didn't have a whole lot of time to put it together. We came within 500 votes, you know, which I was proud. It was
Sure.
It was a great campaign. And then I felt like it was a natural transition for me to run for office. I can tell you when I worked on Wall Street, I never thought that I'd be here today. But being in the community, helping people, helping candidates, actually loving and caring for people across the island. And I just felt it's a natural transition for me to run for city council. So that was when I made the decision that I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and run for city council. And I'm loving it. I'm loving the race right now.
Well, I have to tell you that I think that it is so important that we have small business owners running for office, especially in the current climate, because too many of our sitting elected officials have been in service right from the beginning of their, career, have been in service to elected officials, and so they don't really have a grasp, I don't think, on small business and what and taxes and what it takes to actually employ people. So for me, having people who are small business owners, and especially those with a finance background, is so important to our city government. And in a post-COVID situation and in a post-protest situation, now more than ever, we have to look to people with a wealth of experience such as yours to be running for city council. So let's get into that for a bit. So your race for city council, what are you hoping for? What's your focus? And tell people why you're running and what you want to do when you get there.
So unfortunately, when I got into the race a little later than I wanted to, let me just preface it with that, because I was running Winnie's campaign and I didn't want to do both together. She needed 100% of me and 100% of my time. And, we were at the Board of Elections. We, had to count votes. So that took a little longer. It didn't end on election day. It went like a month beyond. So after I finished that race, I started my first fundraiser. And because of the fundraiser, it was just the launch, and we really didn't get into what I wanted to do. I'm speaking from the beginning, Leticia, so just bear with me. COVID hit, and I made a conscious decision that I was not going to actively fundraise because I did not want to, or didn't feel comfortable asking people for money during this time. I just couldn't do it. So what I look to achieve in Staten Island, what I'd like to see happen, well, the council member has done a great job. I think she did a great job with Staten Island Forward. So let's start with that. From the time I moved on Staten Island to where it is now, the North Shore looks totally different. I would love to continue that work. One, there is a lot of development. There's a lot of projects that she's not going to see to fruition, unfortunately. I want to make sure that those projects continue. We still have an issue with affordable housing here on the North Shore, not just on the North Shore, all of Staten Island. We don't have the housing stock. People who have the money can't find a place. There's an issue with people and affordability. So I want to be able to work across the aisle and come up with a real solution on how we can have housing that everyone can pay for. Because I feel like when you say affordable housing, people stigmatize that as poor people, or
right.
And I don't like that, because you have people that work hard that are making minimum wage that need a place to stay. Families who can afford, like I said, that the housing stock is just not there. And another thing I like to see is Staten Island have a public hospital. We are never going to build a brick and mortar hospital out here. Healthcare disparities on the North Shore are real. We have an indigent population that Rumsey serves currently. And unfortunately, we don't have a hospital that I think that is performing at its best when we talk about Rumsey. We have Staten Island University Hospital that has Northwell, and so they have money. And then we have Rumsey, who's a standalone hospital that's currently struggling. For our members there, it's probably not the best place to work, but even more so for people who live in Staten Island. They need quality health care and access to quality health care. So my vision is to, and this is a big wish list because people said that this would never happen, but when Councilmember Rose was elected, she had a wish list and she said things like that would never happen either, and she made it happen. I want to see Rumsey part of the H&H system. That is the only way that I think that hospital will be able to serve the community with dignity, the dignity that it deserves. So I would love to see Rumsey part of H&H system. I don't know how to get there, but I'm hoping as I build community partners within Staten Island and outside of the borough, that I would get assistance in making that happen when elected to city council.
Well, there should be no reason that that can't happen, frankly. I mean, the health and hospitals could, you know, bring Rumsey into the system. Oh, I'm sorry. my mic was muted.
That's okay.
There's no reason that shouldn't happen, or it couldn't happen. I mean, there has to be a desire on the part of Rumsey to want to go in, and the desire on the part of HHC to bring them in. I think that if anything, COVID showed us that we don't have enough hospital beds, and it's really dangerous, especially in a borough with over 500 people. And I want you to know, I support you in that. You know, that's one of the desires that I had when I was chair of the community board, was to find a way to, if we're not going to get a brick and mortar hospital, then at least get a fifth of the spending of the HHC budget, because we are, you know, we're a large population. So, all right, so let's move on a little bit. So these are great goals that you have. And you spoke about the council member and her having a big wish list, but her big wish list came true, right? I mean, nobody thought that garage on Jersey Street could get
Never.
Okay?
Never.
There was a lot of negotiation. I was proud to be the chair of the community board when she was making those negotiations with sanitation to move it. We all worked collectively together with the then borough president, James Molinaro, and we were able to get that money in the budget to move that thing. And now there's an opportunity for affordable housing on that site. So same thing with the Bay Street corridor rezoning. That was something that we saw a lot of resistance to. A council member took the lead. She knew that if she didn't move, then we'd never have a rezoning on Bay Street. And while it's not perfect, it's done. So I know you could get some things done, but let's talk about what's going on in the North Shore and some of the things that council members Rose is not going to be able to see to fruition. Let's talk about the wheel. Let's talk about the outlets. Let's talk about Lighthouse Point and the other phases of Irving. Talk to us about your vision, because I know that you have the support of other elected officials across New York City who have some really great things going on in their borough that you want to bring to Staten Island.
One of the things I admire, Councilmember Donovan Richards, his district is similar to the North Shore when we talk about waterfront, the Rockaways. And he was able to do some really innovative housing in his district. I want to really sit with Councilmember Donovan Richards, and if you hear me, I'm calling for a meeting so we can sit down, and I want to see what the roadmap for him was. It's not going to be the exact same thing, but we have to look at housing in other places that were successful and see how we can kind of mirror that here in Staten Island. But it starts with partnerships. It starts with all of us working together. I don't have a problem working with anyone across the aisle. I don't have a problem working with anyone. I mean, take personalities out of it. It's about doing the right thing and the best thing for our North Shore residents. So I would love, and I'm so open to looking what other people do outside the borough. When we talk about the wheel, I don't know what the wheel didn't happen. I really am not in a position to talk about what is going to happen there. But I always envision an attraction, something that brings other people here and keeps them here, because the Empire Outlets is magnificent. I think it's really, really great. But what that whole strip, what's going to keep people here? And I feel like we really need to be innovative, and I think the council member has been. COVID hit, everything shut down, like you said, so we don't know where the next phase is. Are all these stores going to be able to be maintained after the reopening? I don't know. I know that Nordstrom filed for bankruptcy. Is that true? Like I heard, so I don't know what that space is going to look like. I feel like the River State Park in Harlem, what they did with their art center there. I was there when they renamed it, and it was absolutely, I was in awe. I'm like, why can't we have something like this in Staten Island? like something like this that's on the waterfront arts and it's open to the public. And I just like, wow. But it was a partnership with the governor. The governor put some money in, and then other principals came in and put money in, and voila, we have this amazing center for the community. So I really want to see something like that happen on the North Shore. And I want to work with people who can help me and teach me so I can get those things done.
And I think that's not a pie in the sky request either. And when we originally started working on the North Shore, and I was a part of that under Governor Pataki, the original concept for what is now the baseball stadium was to also have the Staten Island Museum of Arts and Sciences at the ferry terminal, and to have a large theater and maybe even a planetarium there. So there's an opportunity for that to happen. Go ahead, George. I know that you have.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, I had a bar on the North Shore for a long time, and the North Shore always has felt like it's on the verge of exploding. And then they brought in this wonderful, and when I say always, I mean 30 years. They brought in the Staten Island Yankees first, which I thought was amazing. Empire Outlets, which, like you said, is absolutely beautiful. But without the entertainment and community component, both of these things I think are in trouble. If we don't address the lack of entertainment, retail is Amazon. You need entertainment retail now. You need to have more than just, I need a shirt to go out. So I'm really looking forward to, seeing what's going to happen in the future to make that zone an entertainment zone. I mean, put up a ski slope, an indoor ski slope, something to draw people in to say, I'm going to scoot over to Staten Island. We'll throw the kids over here, let them have a good time. We're going to shop, eat, drink, and enjoy the beautiful view, because it is one of the most beautiful views.
We have a lot of people. When I go to the outlets, when I go into the city and I drive there and I park, I see people coming off the ferry that are not from New York, probably not from the States, and they're in awe with the beauty of that view. It is truly an amazing story. But once they go through those stores, they don't stay. There's really not many restaurants that are close. You have Bayou up the block, you have Besso's, Bayou one way, Besso's there, and then Blue, and then Ruddy and Dean. I've never been there, but there's not a lot of restaurants that people know about. And if they don't travel outside that space, you don't know that these things exist. So like you said, George, it's important. We have to bring something to keep them here, because Staten Island is a beautiful place, especially in North Shore. We want everybody to see what we have to offer. When I bring my friends over here, I take them to the Empire Outlets. I take them and they're amazed at, oh my God, this is so relaxing. This is so beautiful. I feel like it could be better than great. Right now it's good, but it could be great. We're so close.
And I think that the other thing that we need to do is to make that connection, because I did bring some interested developers over. I must have been in February. They were very interested in looking at the wheel site, and they had some ideas for it. But when we got out, we came through the Empire Outlets, which was fabulous, and they were absolutely floored by how beautiful the design was. But when they got out to the sidewalk, they realized that there was no continuous connection from Empire Outlets to the ferry terminal to to Lighthouse Point and to the Bay Street Landing beyond, that you had to zigzag across Bay Street or Richmond Terrace, right? Cross over on one side, go to Borough Hall, then walk down a little bit, then cross over another side to get to the Lighthouse Point. It was a mess, and they saw it and they were confused. And these are architects and developers, and they said the first thing they said to me was, Leticia, you want us to bid? You want us involved in this? Well, you better fix these sidewalks. And that's something that the community board with Council Member Rose had been really, really pushing for years and years and years. Because what people don't realize is that the walk from the ferry terminal to Snug Harbor is only 1.8 miles. Now, Barry Park City, that promenade is 1.6 miles. People walk that every day, sometimes twice a day. I don't know. Should I take out the headphones back? Wait. George, can you hear better? Selena, can you hear me better?
I hear you better without the headphones.
Okay. George is on mute. Okay. I heard feedback. I'm sorry. So it's 1.4 miles, 1.6 miles for the Battery Park City Authority. People job that twice. The reason people don't walk from the ferry terminal to Snug Harbor is because they don't have a continuous connection of sidewalks to do it. There's no visible connection, and that's something that both of us have to work on, Selena, when we get into office in January. All right, so let's talk about something, because I know you testified in front of the City Council with respect to the budget. All right, so we know that there have been first before we get there, I want to just acknowledge that Janella Meeks joined us, and she says she loves Selina Grey.
Thank you, Janella. I love you too, baby. I love you too.
John Malloy joined us. Connie Celia Reginella Barone joined us. Antonio Di Simone joined us from Sorrento, Italy, Selena. And he joins us every Monday and Friday. He's one of our #1 fans. So let's talk about what's going on now with COVID having destroyed both the state and city budget, and the protesters and the overtime with the police. Some people are saying defund the police and pay for or close the gap. The police budget is $6 billion, and supposedly our deficit for the city is $6 billion. So, as a future council member, as a council candidate, what do you say about that?
Well, I don't want to say defund, but let's say redirect money to that where they need to be. So I have friends all over, and I hear what everyone has to say, and I think City Council is already working on this. So this will probably be something that'll be done before I get elected. So I believe that there are certain things that were placed in the police department that should never have been placed there. Mental health services, animal control, homeless services. I was talking to a friend last night, and she's an officer, and she said the reason why mental health services is part of NYPD is because social workers were afraid of their clients. And if that was the case, we need better training, maybe, I don't know, different qualifications for social workers to deal with clients that may be a little troubling. I don't have the answers right here and now, but it's something that should be looked at, because I don't think that, I'll give you some examples, my own personal experiences. My neighbor 2 doors down from me is 70-something years old, and he has dementia. And every time the family can't handle him, they call the police department, and 3 to 5 cop cars show up for a 70-something-year-old man that has dementia, because the family, they don't have the resources or don't know how to handle his dementia. That is not, to me, an NYPD problem. He's not a violent person. He's just has dementia. He needs help. The family needs help dealing with that. I had a raccoon on my porch that would not go away. Call animal control. Listen, I don't know what's going on with this raccoon, but he won't go away. He just kept walking back and forth, back. It was female. It looked like she was pregnant, but she was very comfortable on my porch and in front of my door. I called animal control. You know who they sent? NYPD. They were very lighthearted during the whole process. I thought it was comical and they were excellent in getting this raccoon removed, but there's just certain things that don't need to be in the police department. Youth services should not be in the police department. When we talk about the summer youth employment program, that is devastating to communities of color if it does not happen this summer. We're talking about kids who haven't been in school since February, March, whatever, and they're not going to have jobs. They're not going to have summer programs. What are the communities, the Black and brown communities, going to look like if these children don't have something constructive to do for the summer? We need to make sure that the Summer Youth Employment Program DYCD budget was slashed 35%. We need to make sure that that budget is fully funded and fully restored. Now, it's kind of too late to have a full 6 weeks of summer youth employment, but we have to have some sort of program for these kids so they can make money for the summer and have something constructive to do and not be in the streets. Because I truly believe that we can create a social distancing component to the programming. If it's the food pantries that need to be helped out, if it's small business owners that have been closed for God knows how long, maybe we can get 2 or 3 summer youth employment workers to go work with them, delivering food curbside, I don't know, cleaning tables on outside, because now a lot of things have to move outside. And this is going to be a new world for our small businesses, restaurants alike. So there are a lot of things that the kids can do, and we just need to get creative as a community. I know that the council members working hard as heck to ensure that that budget is restored for summer youth, but that is what I would love to see done. And I'm sure that those are things that are going to be done before I get elected to city council.
Well, and to talk about that for a minute, and I'm not going to play the Republican Democrat game, but I do want to point out though that we have a fully Democrat mayor, city council, public advocate, controller, and yet the first thing they cut when we started to go into distress is summer youth employment, and it's always the Republicans that take it on the chin, as we don't care about education, we don't care about that, but just as an example. The fact that these young people need a job, and these young people, the Summer Youth Employment Program teaches young people how to work and gives them a sense of fulfillment. These should have never been on the chopping block. There were probably so many other areas, not probably, we both know, Selena, there was a lot of fat in that mayor's budget. I mean, we went from $70 million to 92 billion, sorry, $70 billion to $92 billion in 8 years. There was a lot of pork in that budget because times were good and we were flush, and he spent every single dollar on it. But to cut the summer youth employment, to me, is absolutely the worst thing that this mayor could have done.
And Leticia, not just that, a lot of the community-based organizations, the CBOs, healthcare, a lot of these budgets get cut every year. And the only budget one of the budgets that remains robust is the police department. So I know that the city council is doing everything they can to look at items line by line to see if they could redirect money to the agencies so they could do their jobs and take those things out of the police department so they can do what they're supposed to do and not be involved with, mental health, animal control, homeless services, all the other things that we just mentioned. We really need to look at that and not cut the budgets that affect communities like mine. Healthcare is a big issue. The CBOs that serve our communities, they may not be in existence because of this budget, because of COVID, and that's going to be a really big issue. Another thing that I'm calling for is all of them to partner together. We're going to have to find a really creative way for CBOs to work together, because the way it exists right now, I just money coming down the pike for them to operate the way they've been operating. So they're going to have to share services. I don't know what that's going to look like, but the CBOs that have the capacity to handle the programming are going to have to start incorporating the smaller ones into their programming. And that's how it's going to look. It's going to be different because everybody's fighting for the same dollar, but I never agreed with that the way that was anyway. I always thought that we should be sharing, our community-based organization should be sharing and giving opportunities to the smaller ones. I always felt that way.
Well, already this year, because I'm involved with the local development corporation for the Downtown Alliance. Already this year, they've ended the year early at April 24th instead of June 30th, and are making us ask permission from the city council to spend the rest of our contract in June, due to COVID. So I can see right now that they're going to be cutting a lot of these not-for-profits. And I think it's a shame too, because the local development corporations, their goal is to help small businesses get, thrive in emerging areas or in marginalized districts. And so if they cut and get rid of our budget just when we're trying to repair the damage from COVID, then we're going to lose an enormous amount of tax dollars that are going to really have a ripple effect in the city budget. And I mean, that leads me to, look, there's a lot of problems with the city budget, and I'm a big proponent for saying that Staten Island needs to have a larger voice in the city council. And I know that for some of our audience that's watching now, I'm being very myopic. We're talking about New York City specifically when we have people from all over the country watching us. But I think that it matters to talk about New York City, because if you can have an understanding of how to govern New York City, you can have an understanding of how to govern a small town like Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. And so I think it's a conversation that it involves everybody. But I think that the one thing about the police is $6 billion is not even 10% of a $92 billion budget. And when you think about the police department, their job in essence is to keep the city safe and clean so that we can bring in tourism, that we could attract business, right? That we could attract people that are going to spend money, that are going to give money to our budget to keep the city rolling. I always look at the police department as, the entity that makes people want to come to your city. Because when you're looking for a house, what do you look for? Safety and education, right? You want the school districts and you want public safety. But as you rightly stated, with the police department, with guns and stun guns and bullets and handcuffs and everything else, having to respond to a mental health issue, the chances of that escalating to something other than we're going to help you with dad is enormous, because you have people who are crime fighters. They're trained to look for bad guys and to take those bad guys down and to put them in jail. Now you're sending them with all this stuff to, talk about a raccoon or to, talk about that. They're not trained for that. And I don't think, frankly, any one organization or any one person can be trained in that large scope, right? But that's what we want from them. We want them to be supermen and women. As soon as they put on that badge, then we want them to be able to deal with a distraught mother whose child is choking. We want them to be able to deal with a drunk driver that, fell asleep in the Wendy's parking lot. We want them to be able to deal with, somebody who punched a woman in the face, a raccoon, dad who has Alzheimer's, and it's just not right. So
traffic enforcement, and speeding tickets,
and as we see lately with, with George Floyd and the Wendy's you just mentioned. Policing has to change, and policing has to change. When I'm a caregiver to a young man who's on the spectrum. What is that going to look? And he doesn't know black or white. There's black or white. There's no gray area for him. There's right or wrong. If he's stopped by the police because they think that he's doing something wrong, my fear is that he won't comply, because in his head, he didn't do anything wrong. Why are you stopping me? He has to, and that's my fear for him, because there is no gray area for him. Even when I'm telling him stuff around the house, he's like, I didn't do it, and I didn't say, and it could be deemed as disrespectful, but it's not. It's just black and white for him. So we do have to change the way the police department is currently structured. It's systemic. Somebody told me, oh, we need to hire more black and brown police officers. That's going to change it. No, that's not going to change it. That's not going to change it. It's systemic. It's the way the police department is currently structured, and I don't think that's a quick fix. It has to be a thought out process, because if you take that component out of it, if you take, and I was just talking about this with my husband last night. I said, if we take, mental health and homeless services out, then is there something in place to is there something to replace it? Are we ready for somebody to go in and take on that responsibility? And we have to think about that too. Once we start pulling those things out of the police department and reallocating the monies to the agencies that need to be doing that, how is that going to look? Do we have people trained up enough that can go in there and do that? Do we have enough people hired to go do that? So that's something that we talked about last night. Me and my husband stayed up till 3 o'clock talking about that last night, and just talking about those issues.
One of the most complicated issues of our time to me, because I'm going to say something maybe a little out there, but you can't legislate racism, right? It's something that just trickles within you unknowingly to some people, and that's where the phrase systemic racism comes from, right? You don't really, realize it, but the reality is, in my opinion, all of this still not going to fix it, right? I think what we need is more. Staten Island has a Mason-Dixon line, right? There's a Mason-Dixon line across the middle of the island, and good luck trying to get somebody to go either direction on that Mason-Dixon line. I think open community conversations need to be promoted, and we need to mix and mingle and look at each other. And again, I'm not saying I don't, like human beings from both sides.
Yes.
This is my neighbor, not a black person. This is my fellow Staten Islander, not a white person. So that's a big statement, right? I mean, but I think the only chance we have is to mingle.
The leadership in the police department has to be able to identify people who shouldn't be cops. I don't think that they've done a good job with. I think that standards have been lowered to allow certain people in to meet quotas, and probably shouldn't be carrying a gun and shouldn't be policing us. And probably shouldn't even be policing themselves. So we have to look at that as well.
Do you know the mental check comes after you've passed all the other tests? You don't get psychologically examined until you've had your test, you've had meetings, they've wada'd you, they've checked your background. Then you take the mental health test.
But
it's bizarre to me. It should be first.
But the issue with these unions, right, is that's why unions are there, and you're in the nurses union, Selina, and and listen, I'm a long line of union people. I'm very supportive of unions, but we all know that unions aren't there for the good guys, right? For the guys and girls that do their job. They don't need so much the union representation, because they do their job, they do what they have to do. The importance of the union comes in when somebody is accused or somebody is they're accused of doing something wrong, and the unions are there to support that person so that they're not singled out. And that's what a union's supposed to do, right? They're supposed to rally around, whether it's the teachers union.
I don't see that. I don't agree, because we've gotten rid of some bad actors. I'm not a member of NISNA. I organize them. I'm actually a member of USW. I'm a USW member.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with that, because there's a lot of roles that unions play for their members, and protecting them if management is treating them wrong, if they're being mistreated at work. Yeah, that's one. Bargaining and negotiating to them. The union as a whole, and let me tell you, all union members don't move in the right direction. It's like, like a family that just don't get along. And so they have legislation, like I could talk about the healthcare part of it. Like they have legislation that they want to pass. So they are educating their members and they're getting their members to lobby elected. So it's not just protecting. I wouldn't just minimize it to just protecting the members when they do something wrong. They're there for that, but it's much bigger than that. So
and I agree with that. I didn't mean to minimize, and you're right. I made it seem too myopic. But what I'm saying is that generally speaking, right, people that go to work, do their job, don't have any complaints against them, vote when they're supposed to for their union rep. The union, the impact of the union might not be felt by them as much as it is by somebody who winds up being a complaint is made against them or something else. So let me clear that up.
Because we've gotten rid of some bad actors, and Staten Island University just had some bad actors not too long ago. And
that's right, we did. But think about it. But historically, we've had the rubber room for teachers. How many teachers who have been in trouble, who've been in the rubber room for decades? And again, the union's job is to save their job. But so I think that where I get a little bit aggravated when I hear people say, "Oh, the police union shouldn't be protecting, the cops." That's the union's job. But you're right. We have to look in every union, and we have to look to get rid of the bad actors, because that's what, when we police ourselves, or when the unions police themselves, it only brings up every single member of that organization rather than fighting for the few that maybe shouldn't be there. And we know that Derek Chauvin had 16 complaints against him. Whether or not they were valid, who knows? But that's a long history of complaints. And when you take a look at that with somebody else, I don't think an average cop gets that many complaints, but I might be wrong, And I know nurses also have that problem. They get a lot of complaints because the people that they serve are under duress. So there's going to be all kinds of bullshit complaints put against nurses and doctors that have to be weeded out, and we've got to figure out what the bottom line is. So
this is a double-edged sword to me, right? So if we don't, I struggle with my words here, but if the police don't have a mechanism of protection for themselves, who are we going to get to be police? So this is a really delicate issue, right? If the police, right now the unions are standing up for the cops, and the problem is whether they're good or bad, they're going to war for them, right? We don't want that either. But how do we get good quality police officers wanting to be police if they feel like nobody has their back?
Right.
And that's a colorless issue. I mean, I'm sure. We're in one of the hardest questions of our time today. How do we do both? It's near impossible.
Yeah.
Well, Janella Meeks, I just want to say this, Selena. Janella says, maybe we need to invest in real community policing. Police should not be afraid of communities they are supposed to protect. Now, when I was a kid, there was a CPAP officer that used to walk the beat all the time in the community. I knew them when I had a small business. He walked around, came in for coffee. And then all of a sudden, people started complaining that the CPAP officers were getting foods from restaurants and we're getting things for free, and things were getting corrupt or they were turning the other way. So they got rid of the CPAP officers. It was the craziest thing I ever saw. So what do you think, Selena? Should we get the community police back?
We do. Didn't we do that with the NCOs? I thought we did that with the NCOs. Some of our NCOs are better than others, and they've created some of the NCOs here on the North Shore have great relationships with the community, but I don't believe that that's the answer. There's something systemic that we have to, and I'm not a police officer, nor do I pretend, and I'm not going to pretend I have an answer, but internally and systemically from the top, we have to look at what's going on, and that needs to be evaluated. I don't think the police can police themselves. I don't think that's something that's really, really happening. When we talk about budget cuts, the CCRB budget is going to be cut too, and we voted to have 17 new members on CCRB, and that may not happen. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Oh yeah, that's an hour-long show itself.
but we do have to look at racism in the police department because it exists, and it's those cops that maybe were bullies or were slighted as young people, and they get enough hugs from their daddy that they act the way they do. But the police department has to get better at weaning those type of people out, and they should never be officers. I don't have the answers. They have to come up with some psychological evaluation that is more robust than the one they currently have, because currently the one that they have probably isn't working so well.
Maybe if the police were part of the community they policed, that might help too. Because what I see now is you don't get somebody from the neighborhood as the cop in the neighborhood. He's someplace else. I think if we this is our neighbor, John, the cop, that would make things a little bit easier.
But I don't even think it's going to be hard to recruit people to be police officers.
Yeah, probably.
Sure. Yeah, you make it $40,000 a year, to be shot at, and to be hated and to be villainized. And I mean, it's not like this is a great paying position. It's really, there's nothing driving people to want to be police officers. And you've got captains that are telling you have to meet a quota. You've got people yelling at you when you stop them for a violation. You got people yelling at you for tickets. I think, Selina, what you said earlier, I think truly, I want to go back to that for a little bit because I think it's worth repeating. We need to get the cops out of the businesses they don't belong in, and that includes traffic stops, because I don't understand. Cops make a lot of money for the cities that they work for. They are money generators with their traffic tickets and a lot of the things that they do. If we take them out of that, I think that we'd all be better off. Because again, if you're training somebody to be a detective, to sniff out the bad guys, there's a certain kind of mindset that you have to have. It's called suspicious. You have to be suspicious of everybody all the time, because you've got to figure out who's pulling your chain and who's not, because you've got to find who's committing the crime. It's not like you arrive on the scene and the criminal goes, "Oh, here I am, arrest me." It doesn't work that way. So if we want our police officers to do that and to be in that mindset of being suspicious, then we should reduce some of that other crap that they have to do, including generating money for the city. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, I don't trust that Staten Islanders are going to police themselves on the road when it comes to driving, because they drive like maniacs.
Not just Staten Island.
So I remember one day going to a mall and this guy drove through freaking parking lot and almost ran me over. My husband almost ripped his head off. He was I was like, whoa, I had to jump back. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, you don't see my wife crossing? Like, you almost ran her over. I just don't trust that we are going to do a great job with monitoring our driving skills here on Staten Island if the police are not out there.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be police with a gun. It could be traffic enforcement officers, like the brownies. It used to be the brownies, the meter maids, they used to call them. I mean,
we still have traffic cops, right? We still have.
Yeah, they just issue tickets and get you towed and read your meter.
What we do have that we didn't have is technology, right? I mean, we have technology. We don't need to use humans for everything, right? So even though I abhor, and I will say this, abhor the red light camera system that Mayor de Blasio put in place, I think there is a technological answer for a lot of this stuff, including speeding. There's no reason for a confrontation over doing 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. 60? Yes. So technology can be used along with humans to curb and make that interaction for the little stuff less.
So bad behavior, yeah. I just feel like we won't do a good job if they're not out there controlling how we drive.
We have the state on our highways now, right? Is that
but only I think they can go pretty much anywhere, but they're pretty much on the Staten Island Expressway.
And the expressway, yeah. Yeah, but then that becomes a whole thing, though, Selena. Right? You've got a guy or a gal in a bulletproof vest with a gun on their hip, a stun gun in their pocket, handcuffs in their back, pocket, and they're approaching you because you were going 10 miles over the speed limit because their captain told them that we need you guys to issue this many tickets so that we look good as a unit, because the city needs money. Now, what are the chances that that person is going to wind up in that connection, that there is an opportunity for that to go really, really bad? Because you got somebody carrying an artillery on them who's trained to be suspicious of everyone, because that's how they do their job, and you're telling them go out there and stop somebody for and get money out of them, give them a speeding ticket. I think we have to know what we want our police officers to do, and I think that we could say that the system is bad, and I agree the system's bad. I think the reason the system's bad is because we don't have a goal or a focus for our police officers, and we all know that for something to be successful, you have to have a goal and you have to have a plan to get to that goal. Our police officers are being asked to do everything for no money, and also to and to be and to be abused while doing it. And I think that you're in trouble.
And coming from the other side, our communities of color, we don't want to be stopped for
for being black.
Yeah, we don't want to be because that still exists. You know how big my husband is, Leticia, and now he has this full beard. He's 6'6". He's driving with me yesterday. He doesn't really leave the house much, but we drive yesterday, and the cop pulls out behind me, and because you see this big black man sitting next to me, and he puts on his lights. I think he was just scanning my plates. My husband's like, "Oh, babe, just pull over." I said, "I'm not going to pull over. I didn't do anything wrong." He said, "But he's with the lights." I'm like, I am not pulling over, and until he goes whoop whoop, we're going to keep driving. So I just believe he was just scanning my plates and put my plates through the reader, which is something that when cops pull up behind me, why should we get nervous? Why should I? I didn't do anything wrong, but that happens to us all the time. So it works both ways. I feel like being
there's another technology.
Be respectful. When you pull people over and don't just pull us over because we're driving while black.
And we can use the body cameras now. See, there's definitely technological answers because, again, I don't think the sentiment of racism is going to be eliminated because there are very smart people that take these psych tests and they know what to say, but they don't. What they don't say is what's in their heart because they know they won't get the job, right? So there's another technology. How many people of color do you pull? I don't know what the metric is, but
I don't know either.
Use those body cameras and just be more transparent with the police officers. I fear the defund the police messaging. The way we talk today, I think we all come to more agreement than when that word is used, defund. We're not trying to defund. We're trying to say let's let cops
reallocate monies. Let's put monies in other.
Yeah, and I think defund started like panic in people's minds. Just the bad marketing is what I'm going to call it.
It was bad marketing.
Come up with a different term.
Yeah, it was bad marketing because it split us. It split people into are you pro-cop or anti-cop? And it didn't necessarily have to be that way, but that's what's happening all over the place.
It's people not black, white, it's gray. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, people are asked to take sides, and it's just such an interesting scenario that we have that we think somehow or another, or some of these protesters think somehow or another that by defunding the police, they can somehow eradicate racism. And I think every one of us knows that racism is taught and learned. It is something that either you are or you aren't. You can't become, somebody can't mandate or legislate you to be not a racist. You have to find it in your heart to realize the ridiculousness of judging people based on the color of their skin, their nationality, their religion, or their party affiliation, or any reason. You have to have that in your heart not to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
George, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And we're coming along slowly because you have to make it uncool to be a racist. that's marketing, right? I'm a marketer.
Right.
It has to be uncool, and that starts with people saying something and becoming friendly with each other, and then saying, "Well, my friend Selina's not like that. Why would you say something? Don't say something like that, right?"
Yeah.
That's something that has been happening not slowly over time. Because as a kid, I distinctly remember my grandparents who, are from a different era, saying, "We're going to get chinks tonight. Do you want chinks?" In my brain, if I ever tried to utter those words to Gina's kids, I would bite my own tongue now. So somewhere I learned, stop that. That's not nice, right?
Yeah.
We need to crack that nut. I'd be happy if we could.
And when I was on Wall Street, I was a woman of color in management.
In finance.
That was not easy. That I had to tear down a lot of walls, and I was always every day having to prove who I was and prove who I am, and that's tough. That was very hard, but it made me who I am today. I'm thankful for those experiences. I wouldn't want my children to have to go through those experiences, because I think that we've come to a place where you don't have to tolerate the type of racism in the workplace that I had to tolerate when I was just trying to feed my family and work every day.
Well, I would hope that Generation Z would have gotten it right. But I see them out here now, and they've swung the pendulum the other way. That if you don't agree with what they're protesting about or what they're saying, I can't tell you how many times in the last month that I have been called a Karen. I have never, ever in my life ever been called a racist. Ever. Except for in this last 2 months. Now I'm a racist and I'm a Karen.
Well, I do believe you have to look at, there are a couple of groups out here doing this. There are a core group of kids, the young leaders who just want to be heard. I do not believe that all they want is respect. They want actually really the police to listen to what they're saying. And they actually have been able to sit down and have really meaningful conversations and I think Chief Corey understood where they were coming from.
Oh, yeah.
But then you have the agitators that are out here too. So we need to be mindful. You have kids that just want to be heard. They just want people to stand with them with what they go through every day and understand it and make systemic change so they don't have to live like that anymore, and create opportunities for them, because a lot of them just want opportunity. They want opportunity to go to school, to have a job, one day get married, own a home, whatever, make something more than minimum wage, because clearly we know that the minimum wage as it exists right now is not really a living wage. So make a living wage. So we have to support them in that, and be able to identify who the troublemakers are and who are the ones that really just want their voices heard. And I talk to those kids who want their voices heard, not the ones that want to cause trouble.
Yeah. Protesters aren't looters, and looters aren't protesters.
Well, that's the truth. And to me, I think that the biggest sin of all of this that has happened over the last couple of months is that it seems to me, and this is not, I've said it over and over again, there was an active group trying to divide America, and they were trying very, very hard to take the George Floyd protest and tragedy, murder. They were trying to take that, and they were trying to create it into something something ugly. They were trying to create a deep division, and I watched them, and I was glued to the television, and I watched coverage from all over, and I watched what looked to me to be college age white kids breaking windows, encouraging looting, Molotov cocktails, starting trouble out of what was peaceful protesting. And I'm still baffled as to where they decided, and it was organized, it was organized. In some way it was organized. Who organized them? Who's paying for this?
They try to organize out here in Staten Island as well. They're trying. So tell the young leaders to be mindful. And if you're going to organize, you're going to protest, you have to do it in groups. Know who you like, get each other's number. And when you guys go out and you want to protest and you see somebody that doesn't look familiar, you have your core group. Do you know that? Do you know that person? Do you know that person? You need to be able to identify who the troublemakers are.
It just takes one to ruin everybody's reputation.
It does. And then you get those people who, do have racist tendencies who are going to go, oh, that's the reason. Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they do. They loot. They loot. And how do you argue? You can't even have a conversation with that person now, because now whatever was really in there that was a little screwy is now locked down because they have footage. They can see it. And it's a sin. So, Selina, it was great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. We didn't even get through everything, but it was a great conversation. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's my pleasure. If you guys have any other questions or anything I can answer or be a part of, I'm here.
Selina Grey. So Selina will be, her primary will be in June of next year, of 2021, just like mine. We're going to have ranked choice voting next year, so it's going to be very interesting. We may or may not have a matching funds program, so stay tuned. But the one thing I know is I have worked with Selina. I admire her greatly. She is fastidious in the work that she does, and she makes sure it's all right and on point, and nobody works harder than you, Selina, and I'm always honored to be in your presence.
I'm honored to be here too.
Yeah, and she's not just a colleague, but we're eating buddies, drinking buddies, and we're dear friends. So yes,
you can drink with Leticia. You're all right.
Another one of my dear friends as a guest on our show. So Selina, lots of luck, and we'll love to have you back again.
Thank you, and God bless and have a great day, guys. Stay safe and wear your mask.
Okay, and Janella, thank you for your comments. Janella says, but the looters were not all black, and that's what we were saying, Janella. It was mostly the white privileged kids that looked like they were doing the looting and the firebombing. Right. So they were making it look like it was somebody else. But all right, win Selina win was Janella's last words. Okay,
thank you,
easy, everybody. See you on Monday. Our guest on Monday is Jerry Kazar. He is the state chairman of the Conservative Party. So we're going to get, we're going to get into the minds of a real conservative and see what they have to say about this.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Selina. Thank you.